Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we are going to be solving simple linear equations. So in these equations here, as you can see, we have subtraction, addition, multiplication, and division. And in the next video, we'll be solving more complex linear equations. So stay tuned. So these equations will be very quick to solve because they're like one-step operations. So for our first equation, we have x minus 11 equal 8. So basically, while solving these equations, what we would want to do is to solve for the variable. And the variable in this case is x. And what we would want to do is get x by itself so that we would be able to solve for it. So we would take over or carry over the equal sign any number or letter sometimes that we would not need in this case. So the only thing that we would not need, or the only thing that we would want to carry over the equal sign, is this 11 here. Because if we carry over the 11, then we would just have x on the one side of the equal sign, and that's basically what we would want to do. So if we carry x over the equal sign, what we would have to do is change the operation or perform the opposite operation as to what's happening on this side of the equal sign. So if we see here, we see that x is being subtracted by 11, or 11, sorry, is being subtracted by x. So once we take this 11 over the equal sign, we would have to do the opposite of what's happening here. And what's happening here is subtraction. So when we take the 11 over the equal sign, we would have to perform the addition operation, which is the opposite of subtraction. So let's do that. We have our x, and once we take the 11 over, we would have to add. So then it would be right back the equal sign and 8, and then we would write plus 11, which is the opposite of subtraction. So once we take the 11 over, we would have to add, and basically we just solve the equation from there. We would then have x is equal to 8 plus 11, which is 19. And that's basically how to solve this problem. Now let's continue. The next question. The next question we have is c minus 5 is equal to 16. And the same thing is happening with this equation. We have a negative 5, or we have 5 being subtracted from c. And so once we take the 5 over the equal sign, we would have to add, which is the opposite of subtraction. So then c would equal to 16 plus 5. You see how that happened? Once we just take it over, we just do the opposite of subtraction, which is addition. And then we just solve for c. So 16 plus 5 is equal to 21. And that's basically how to do that question there. Okay, so for our next question, we're going to have 14 plus x is equal to 23. Now we see here, it's a little bit different because 14 is being added to the x. We would have to change the sign that's in front of the number, which the sign in front of 14 is just a positive number, which we already know. So once we take the 14 over the equal sign, we have to do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. So then it would be x is equal to 23 minus 14. So all we did was change the sign of the 14 to minus. And so then x would be equal to 9. And that's basically how to solve that question. Okay, so for our next quick question, we have 4, let me write that a little bit better. 4 plus x is equal to 6. So the same thing is happening from this question over here. We're having an addition, and once we take it over the equal sign, we would have to perform the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. So then x would be equal to 6 minus 4. And then we all know that 6 minus 4 is equal to 2. So x is equal to 2. So as you can see, these are very quick and simple linear equations. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, so now we're going to have a different operation for this question. The question here is going to be 10x is equal to 90. Okay, so let's look carefully at what's happening. The operation that's being performed with the x is multiplication. So this 10 is being multiplied by the x. So this 10x is just saying that it's the same thing as 10 multiplied by x, which is just 10x. So that's basically how we would write it. So 10x is equal to 90. Now, remember what we mentioned before. Once we want to take a number over the equal sign, or take anything over the equal sign, really, we would have to perform the opposite operation. And because we know that the 10 is being multiplied to the x, and that the opposite of multiplication is division, what we would have to do is divide by whatever we want to get rid of, so that we could just be left with the x. So in this case, we want to get rid of the 10, because once we get rid of the 10, we would just have x by itself, so then we would be able to solve for x. So in this case, we're going to divide by 10, because we just want to get rid of it. And remember, in math, we have to always remember what we do to one side of the equal sign, we have to do to the other side. So because we divided by 10 on this side of the equal sign, we have to divide by 10 on the other side of the equal sign, which we know 10 divided by 10, is just 1. So we could just cancel out, because 1x is just equal to, x is equal to 1x. We don't have to write the 1 in front of the x, because we already know that it's 1x. Okay, so then we would have x is equal to 90 divided by 10, which is just 9. And that's basically how to solve that question. All right, so of course we're going to be doing another question just like this one. So again, we're going to have 20x is equal to 40. Okay, so remember, this 20 is being multiplied by the x. And so we would just have to perform the opposite of multiplication, which is division. And we want to get rid of the 20, which means we're going to have to divide by the 20. So we're basically dividing what we want to get rid of, and that's the 20. So if we divide by 20 over here, what we have to do to one side of the equal sign, we have to do it to the other side. So because we divided by 20 over here, we have to divide by 20 over here. And 20 divided by 20 cancels out. So then we would just have x is equal to 40 divided by 20, which is just 2, because 20 goes into 40 2 times. And that's basically how to solve that question. Let's move on to the other question. Okay, so we are going to do a little bit of a different question. Now we're going to be using another operation. We've already used subtraction, we've already used addition, and we've already used multiplication. So now let's get down to division. This question here is saying x divided by 2 is equal to 9. And so in this question here, remember what we would want to do is just solve for the variable, which is x. So we want to get rid of everything that's on the same side of the equal sign as the variable, which in this case is the 2. So we want to get rid of the 2. And so remember what we mentioned earlier, when we would just have to perform the opposite operation as to what's being performed to the x. And in this case, the 2 is being divided by the x. So we would just have to perform the opposite of division, which is multiplication. So what we're going to do is multiply this equation, or sorry, this side of the equation by what we want to get rid of, which is 2. So let's just do that. So we're just going to multiply this equation, this side of the equation, by 2. And remember, what we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other side of the equation. So we would have to multiply by 2 on this side as well, because we did it to the left side. So once we multiply by 2 on both sides, over here, we're going to have these 2 canceling out. And once they cancel out, we would just have x by itself, which is what we wanted in the first place. So then x is going to equal to 9 times 2, which is just 18. And that's how to do that question.